Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to be humbled in your life, go to a stash house in August in South Texas when it's 103 degrees outside and men, women, and children are stacked into a residence with no electricity and no running water.
Así de la manera de como está ahorita toda la gente. Gente está sentada aquí, ya no puedo ni caminar para entrar al cuarto. ¿Por qué? Porque no hay manera. No hay manera de entrar. Por eso que le estaba diciendo de lo del otro bodega y el vato de aquí no me da las llaves, no me resuelve nada de lo que yo le estaba diciendo.
Now what you just saw was a rare glimpse into the smuggler's view of what he thinks of people. Routinely, you hear me talk about how people are treated as a commodity, and you got to see that here. That video was just released last week by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan, and it gives you rare insight as to how smugglers treat people. If you noticed, very little furniture, yet they're laid out across the floor. Many of these people are not just being smuggled, but also trafficked into the United States. Now, there's two separate crimes here happening. You have human smuggling and you have human trafficking. Very often they overlap, but very often they're confused. So let me explain the difference between the two. Human trafficking is exploitation-based, where human smuggling is more transportation-based. Human trafficking is usually not voluntary, where human smuggling is voluntary. A person trying to get from point A to point B. Human trafficking is involving more forced exploitation of a person through force, fraud, or coercion for sex, labor, and services, where human smuggling is fee-based, usually paid in advance or upon arrival. When you think of the southwest border today, things have changed. It is no longer just a U.S.-Mexico problem. And the reason for that is because the world is coming. If you look at this chart here, what you can see is that people from the Middle East, from Africa, and Southeast Asia are traveling to try to reach the Western Hemisphere. Now, how do they do that? In multiple ways. Many fly if they've got the revenue to do that or the money. Others take cargo ships, massive ships, to try to get to South America.
I'm currently standing on a container ship with roughly 10,000 containers. Maybe 5 to 10% of the cargo that comes in and out of the United States is scanned, x-rayed, and looked at by CBP. Any one of these containers you see on this ship could have about 75 people in it. We know, I've talked to CBP agents before, they have found containers with advanced life support systems, food and supplies for these people to live in these containers for a substantial amount of time while they move from port to port.
But once they hit South America, this is where criminal networks really begin to exploit men, women, and children just trying to make a better life for themselves, as they are forced to make their way north from South America into Central America and then to the southern border of Mexico, entering Chiapas. And the fees and exploitation of these individuals really begins to compound. Migrants are usually charged based on their nationality and their country of origin. Central Americans, for example, usually pay between $4,000 to $10,000 to these criminal networks to be moved into the United States. To break that down, guides who make the trip usually are paid $500 to $600. Boatmen who cross people across the Guatemalan border paid about $1.50. Lodging secured at about $12 a night. And local gangs like Central American gangs charge the peso or the tax $100 just for migrants to board the La Bestia train. Mexican police officers and immigration officials charge between $230 to $540 per person to pass. Now, once migrants reach the southwest border of the United States, they've got to pay smugglers around $100 to $150 to be transported across the Rio Grande River, as you're seeing here. Once these migrants cross into the United States, they use an extensive network of halcones. Now, if you've never heard of this network, it is hawks or lookouts who work directly for the Mexican cartels. They use an extensive network of technology of both two-way handheld encrypted radios that are on the cartel's network, or they use an extensive system of apps where they can communicate covertly and encrypted with the cartels. This criminal network is the largest intelligence collection against U.S. law enforcement happening anywhere in the United States. And this is how effective it can be. That in 2019 alone, they moved almost 1 million people into the United States. Many believe that folks just walk across the border. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not how it works. You have to pay the peso or the tax, or you are not getting into the United States. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, but it's very rare. The cartels control everything that happens along that southwest border. What you're seeing here, this is known as a bailout. If you've never seen a bailout before, this is people who just crossed the southwest border illegally between the ports of entry and now are picked up in the back of a vehicle and a traffic stop is being conducted. Bailouts are extremely common, but the goal is to reach the stash house as quickly as possible. Now, once you reach a stash house, one of the things you'll notice that most of these are just one-room shacks. They've got no electricity or no running water, we see routinely along the southwest border. But you also notice that the windows are barred and that there's only one entrance and one exit, as seen here. This stash house was seized in July of 2020. Now, in these stash houses, this is usually where we see the two crimes of human trafficking and human smuggling overlay. Why? Because these people are under their control. And while they may be originally smuggled to being moved from point A to point B, now they can easily be sexually assaulted, they can be used for forced labor, or they can be exploited for future debt bondage. This is where the game changes. Now, throughout our country, there's a debate going on whether this is really happening or not. Whether people are coming from across the world, and the data shows it. It doesn't matter what I feel or what I think. What does the data say? And just looking at the numbers from U.S. Customs and Border Protection going back since 1960, it shows us the number of people that have crossed into this country that have been apprehended. And it is millions and millions of people if you've never seen this data. Now, this comes from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And ladies and gentlemen, this is just what is crossing between the ports of entry. Most would say that would cover all the crimes. But take a look at what's not captured, and also what we've talked about all day. Public corruption, kidnapping, extortions, drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, human smuggling, money laundering, weapon seizures, cyber crimes, and stash houses, never mind the other crimes like splashdowns and others that I didn't even get to. These are 21st century crimes that have to be addressed in our nation. And when we begin to do this, we will start winning again. Be safe.